All right, welcome in everybody. As you can see, we've got a packed room today, and I'm really excited because we're going to be getting into brain analysis in hopefully what is the 101 level. But I think it's accurate to say that this is a representation of one of those topics that, as we talk about, easy to pick up and hard to master. We're very much in that space. So let's go around the horn quickly, make some introductions, and then we'll kind of frame the conversation from there. So Suda, I guess everyone's familiar with you. How you doing?
Good. Happy to be here. This is like exactly what I should be setting up. So you're kind of like doing my job for me.
Hey, it's Web3, right? We all get to collaborate together.
Absolutely. Love it.
Yeah. And PJFluffMcGlitch, how you doing?
I'm good. Yeah. I'm just amazed just looking down at Suda and thinking how the last time we were on a call, he's sat at home, doing his work and on the Discord 23 hours a day whilst working. And now he's working for the guys that we're all excited about and we're having this call for. It's just amazing. It's so lovely to see.
Yeah. Tip of the hat and congrats again.
Thanks, man.
It's awesome. We're in good hands. Erwin, welcome back. Good to see you again.
Hey man, thank you for having me, and nice to see everybody again in the chat.
Good to see you out in the stratosphere there.
Yes.
So excited to dive into it. And then we've got two new folks that I'm sure everyone's very familiar with in the Discord, but talking together here for the first time. So we're really excited for the brainstorm. Registeel, welcome in. Nice to meet you.
Thanks for having me. It's been a highlight. Looking forward to it all week. So thanks for the chance.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm sure we'll get into your background in much more detail, but quickly, how did you stumble across ASM, or I guess NFTs for that matter?
Yeah, I think like a lot of people, it all started with the cryptocurrency side and just the natural progression into tokens and NFTs. The first phase really being the classic profile pic NFTs, and seeing and hearing all the people talk about rarities and specialties, but always feeling like there was something lacking, right? Lacking a utility with a lot of the projects. And that's when I discovered Zed Run. I felt like I was a little late to that project, Illuvium and a lot of the gaming projects that were starting, and said, hey, I actually think the big opportunity here is in NFTs and gaming. Lucky enough, I was stumbled upon the ASM project through someone that was in the Illuvium channel, and it's really become my focus and the one that I am most bullish about long term.
Wow, that's exciting. And I know exactly what you're talking about. It's that kind of dip a toe in the water to the space in general. But once you see what's going on at ASM, there's really no going back. It just kind of consumes the entirety of your attention, right?
Down the rabbit hole, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's crazy to think that we're just getting started. So excited to have you with us. Yoga, nice to meet you. How you doing?
Yeah, hey guys, thanks for having me on the call today. Excited to be here for sure.
It's our pleasure. I guess same question to you. How'd you get started with ASM? And
yeah, I mean, very similar to Registeel. I fell down the rabbit hole early last year, so around the February timeframe. Same trajectory as everyone. Sort of Bitcoin on down, and sort of rotating spiral further and further and further down. And I actually came to ASM through Fluffs. So I was into Fluffs a little bit earlier, and then just sort of transitioned across, and sort of been dipping in and out of ASM a little bit, to be honest with you, for last year. And then when the unboxing happened, and I started to see the genome, and I've been thinking, broadly about these different projects and this whole ecosystem, and how we can really sort of start to understand it and measure it in different ways. And so I got really excited when I started to see the depth of what ASM has, and how there really is something for everyone in ASM. If you're a more technical person, if you just love to collect, if you love to game. So it's super exciting project, and I haven't really thought about anything else since. So.
No doubt. I think what you just mentioned is representative of how this call came about, which is just purely shared curiosity and interest in the main Discord channel. And from that, unless anyone is correcting me otherwise, it seemed like that collaboration really started to take shape. So between you and Registeel and Erwin and Phil, and another community member, the Fastest Gun, you guys really seem to kick it off in terms of how do we assess the brains themselves. So, I think we're clear that the AFA All-Stars are cosmetic at the moment, or at least through the world space of AFA and, perhaps the first couple of games. But the big unknown at the moment is, what do these brains mean? What are we holding on to? And how do we evaluate them? So I guess that would be kind of the first question. I don't know who wants to take it, but what's been your knee-jerk reaction to starting to see the data underlying the visual representation of the brains?
Yeah, I'll kick us off.
Who takes that? Yeah.
Yeah, for me, turning the numbers into something visual was always a big benefit. I think people have looked at the brains for a long time, trying to guess what they could do. And when you eyeball it, a lot of things get lost. And so having the numbers and having the matrix that was made available really started to help us turn it into a visual mapping. And I know that's probably where this all goes by the team releasing some of those things later on. But I think the fun for us was trying to do it ourselves first and try to get ahead of any information that would be released in the future. Mm-hmm. And like anything, what drove me was trying to find scarcity and uniqueness. Just like anything that has value, it's you put it on those two spectrums. And so as we started to plot the information, I was manually grabbing brains and putting it out there, and started to see some deviation and started to see some numbers that look more unique than others. And that's when all of a sudden other people started to get involved that had a bigger data set, and things really took off from there. And yeah, probably a nice segue into what Yoga's been working on.
Yeah, absolutely. And Yoga, I want to toss it over to you, but before we do that, I think just in the spirit of a bunch of new community members coming in every day, it's been super exciting from a numbers standpoint, I think, for, fair to say. Could you just rewind a moment and explain, when you say that you're analyzing the numbers, what numbers you're talking about, where that lives and where that data lives, and what it is that you're looking at?
Yeah, exactly. And
sorry, before you do that, could you perhaps share your screen and just go through that?
That's a good idea.
Would Yoga like to share the model, you mean?
Yeah, I can share, or if you have
just
something
like
to
the
look
process of going through the different websites and finding the genome, and then whatever you do and whatever you want to share.
The process, I'll have to fire up a few tabs. I don't know if Regis, if you have that handy, but in terms of the process of finding everything.
I think there's a video also in the Discord about this.
Right, maybe we can refer.
IP data.
Yeah, the video Owen did is really good in terms of just step by step, with the mouse, what you click on, what you enter, and then creating the text file. So the idea, I guess, is what we've got, this beautiful brain, this 3D image with all the tendrils, or whatever the technical name for them is, which maps itself out over 1,600 data points or numbers from 0 to 9 that represent an ability or a skill or a data point in the brain, in sort of layman's terms. And then I guess what these superstars have done is to map out those 40 by 40 matrix into colors and numbers, and to identify where the strengths and the weaknesses are, or maybe not strengths, where the numbers are, where the peaks and the troughs are within the brain, as a starting point for being able to analyze each of the brains that come out of those gorgeous boxes that we all love so much.
Yeah, I think one way to think about it is, if you look at, obviously every image of every brain, if anybody looks at it, they can see that there are different attributes to that brain, right? There are the tall areas and the short areas are in different places on different brains. And so what is exciting for anyone that's into numbers and patterns is that we have the digital representation of that brain. So every single one of those tentacles, if you want to call them that, has a number associated to it. And so that means we can get a numeric representation of that brain. And so that gives us a way to compare brains and potentially rank brains, look at relative skills on brains in a way other than just visually, because obviously visually as one person, you can only look at so many brains and you can't really it's hard to get to insight just by putting a bunch of brains on your screen and trying to compare them. But when we look at the data set in numerical form, then we can start to see these patterns emerge in the whole set of brains. So we can see which brains are strong in which areas. We can see which brains have strength overall. There's a huge amount of depth there to understanding, whomever created this set, did put a good amount of thought into how these were structured. They're definitely not random. And so there's some reverse engineering happening on our side where we try to sort of find the patterns, see if there's alpha in those patterns, see what would be relevant as information gets dripped out. Then, we're comparing that to what we see in the brain spec. And just to go back to Suda, to your question, for everyone, the numbers are accessible via the NFT itself. So every NFT has essentially a web link encoded in the NFT itself. And when you go to that web link for that NFT, you will get some metadata back. And one item on that metadata is this genome matrix, which is a long series of 1600 numbers, which you can pull.
It's also amazing to see how the community itself went from first the raw data into the total of the brain value, into the range of the numbers, into the how the numbers are plotted on the map that you created. Now we are more discussing about what all these colors mean. So it is really great to see that teamwork in a community, and that really attracts me also to these guys. It is much more depth and working, collaborating as a team across the globe to, in what you said, reverse engineer this great 3D model into numbers and figures, and then understand what's happening. It's really amazing what your guys are doing together also.
Yeah, I just have to get on the tail of that and say, yeah, I'm totally amazed as well, because I didn't realize when I put that information up what will come out of it. Because when I first stated it, I was like, oh yeah, just looked away basically. I was like, oh, there's some cool stuff, and didn't even think about putting it on Discord, but I'm happy I did.
We went from Suda inventing the 8-track player to all of us now consuming things via MP3 in at light speed, right? So yeah, it's great. So, okay, that helps set the table. One of the other things that I think is important to add here is that for the folks that are listening in thinking, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? I am no data scientist. My understanding is that a lot of what we're going to be discussing and really just speculating upon is going to be made available in a user-friendly manner via some sort of dashboard through the native ASM platform. So if you're listening in, and as we continue to go down this rabbit hole, this is much more for the data nerds than it is for just kind of, people like me that have no idea of how to evaluate this stuff. So I just want to frame that up very quickly. But for those that do enjoy reverse engineering things, I think that's where we're getting into a lot of the analytics stuff here. Okay, so I partly derailed the conversation. We were starting to talk about kind of what that baseline is for understanding where that data is coming from, how it's been attributed to each of the brains that we've purchased. Who wants to take it from there? So from this sort of community collaboration, I know Erwin, Registeel, Yoga, you guys were all starting to just continue to build on each other's really thesis of what these numbers mean. What would be the next logical step in terms of how you look at that stuff?
So maybe, so we can get a visual, maybe if you want to, I could share my screen now and we could sort of maybe visually then look at some of these representations and, and what they mean. And then maybe we can all just sort of spitball on that. And does that sound good?
Yeah,
Great.
Fantastic.
Alrighty.
They get a sneak preview instantly from the tool. This is
yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how much of this.
Wow, what is this?
So hopefully this is we'll see. It'd be interesting to see how duplicative this is with what with the ASM team come out with natively. But what we have here is all, I don't exactly know how many, 5,000 and something ASM brains that have been unboxed so far in one, think of it just in one big data set. And then I have to give a massive shout out to the fastest gun, who's not on the call right now, but you know, I mean, that guy is when he says something, I understand about 20% of everything he says, because he is very, very smart. So a lot of the insight in here and ongoing insight is coming from him. So it's a shame he couldn't be on the call, but he really has the deepest handle on this as far as I can see, and sort of the ideas of where we're going to go. But I think I'll just draw everyone's attention to this chart on the right hand side. Is probably the most interesting. And so, as we mentioned, every brain has this genome, and each genome attribute has a value assigned to it. And if we just add all those values up, then you should get what we call the genome weight. So each one of these little boxes in this middle table here, each one of these little boxes has a number from 0 to 9. And if you just add all those numbers up, you get the total weight of the genome. And then if we put those weights on a chart and we count how many brains have those weights, you end up with this beautiful distribution. So we can see that brains that are heavier, i.e. they have a higher value total genome size, are on the right hand side here, right? So there's very few brains with this very, very high genome value. And on the left hand side, likely there's very few brains with a very low genome value. And in the middle, you know, that's the bulk of the average of the brains. And then so you can see we get this beautiful distribution, which is what you would expect. That's a normal distribution for most collections. So I'll pause there for other people to sort of throw on what they observe here.
Yeah, this was the aha moment for me, was going from a world where it was analyzing one brain at a time and trying to guess and ask the community, hey, have you found one that's more than 4,500? And then someone did. Hey, can someone find one over 5,000? It just kept going up and up, and trying to figure out where the upper limit was. And we'll say, we don't know whether that's good or bad still. We can only assume that when we started to add the numbers up, there were lots of zeros and fewer numbers above 5. Again, TBD what all that means. But what became really cool was again, searching for scarcity, searching for uniqueness, and realizing there was a world of brains that went over 5,000. And what could that mean? So what we started to do was to plot those and look at those heat maps all over each other, and start to recognize that even the brains that had scores approaching 6,000 had parts of a heat map that were still filled with zeros. Again, what we can deduce is that's a weakness. That's my theory. That's our theory right now. I don't want to speak for everyone, but again, trying to deduce what scarcity means. And the brains that were on that end of the spectrum had more higher numbers, more green that were in them. And people in the community have certainly been curious, as you've seen in the Discord. Hey, can you score these 3 brains? What do those look like? Some might be selling their brains that are getting a certain score and buying others that have higher. What we see in OpenSea is they're all the same right now. Roughly all the brains are selling for the same amount. And my prediction is we're going to start to see those deviate a bit as people learn more and more information is released.
There were some cases that people were questioning in Discord, actually, from how come that somebody is paying 4.5 E for a brain that's currently at running at 2.5 or something, and they really visually they were looking to understand why they would maybe pay a little bit more for these brains. But what you also discovered in the data set is about the intelligence and actually the brain IQ now becomes a sort of valuation of the brain, and where people are determining if a brain is more value than the other, and that's maybe a little bit dangerous, of course.
Yes.
I also like how Registeel always makes sure to give love to the low genome weight brains.
Yep, they're rare too.
We can't just be like, oh yeah, 5,000, that's great, let's all go for 5,000 brains kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got to show love to all the brains.
That's the bit that's so exciting for me, because obviously I'm looking at the data on, seeing these maps as you're showing now, And you could have a brain that's got a genome weight of 6,000 that is kind of like, in the UK, we might say like a Stephen Fry or a Stephen Hawkins or something, like an incredibly intelligent person or, brain, where surely you would pay more for that brain than an average brain. But if that person can't kick a football or can't react quickly to a teammate's pass or whatever it might be, then they don't have any value within that application of what you're trying to run. And that's what is so fascinating. And obviously, as we start to marry the images and the work that you're doing here with the data that we're pulling from actual games and the stats that we can pull from some of the matches we'll be doing, it's just going to completely open up. Hopefully we'll be able to connect the two and correlate, this person's fast or scores a lot of goals. What are we highlighting, or how do they compare with their teammates? Because as we know with all these things, there's no good having a superstar. You want kind of that blend of brains that work together in a team. And that's what's so good about having a 4-person game instead of you're putting it into your Fluff, who's a first-person shooter. This is a team game, a manager game, you're creating strategies around your team that might not work for other teams, but do for your combination of brains. And the fact that you can take a brain out and switch it with another one, and the forms themselves don't matter. This is what, it's just bonkers. And like you said, Nick, earlier, you don't have to worry about any of this stuff if it doesn't interest you. You can just play the game and earn your asto and enjoy watching your characters grow as a team, or you can just marvel and and work with these sort of models or with people in the community to get a better understanding about your team, like you would in back in the day with Football Manager. You could probably then get a magazine and start understanding strategies that people are doing, or you can just play the game all night and and enjoy it. So that it's just absolutely blows my mind how the potential that this team's created. What I was interested, actually, Sudo, I don't know whether you've managed to talk to David and Carmen and the guys. What's their take on what the Registeel and Yoga and the Fastest Gun have done so far? Are they blown away, or are they like, damn, we're doing our own model, we're about to kind of release our genome, blah, blah,
not
blah.
at all. They love it, because a lot of what David especially likes is feedback, right? Like he runs on that he's not putting out stuff saying this is the archetype and this is the way it is. It's as soon as people start giving feedback and give direction on how or what they're interested in, he puts effort into that. Like, for instance, Chasing Tails and Plunger Game. No one knew that was a thing, but that's definitely a thing now. Also, I just want to go back to what you were saying, Phil, about the gigabrains, etc. So we have that, like, this is not alpha, like I have no idea. But the fluff coach was discussed. So maybe those Stephen Hawking, Stephen Fry brains could go into a fluff or something, or I don't know, maybe there's a mechanic that we can watch other people's games and learn from it, or if there's data coming out of games, etc. But I don't actually know. That's not alpha. Take it for what you will.
Well, yeah, I think the key thing to remember with all this is it's about a team, right? Like one alone doesn't do it, right? Like I picked up a brain and it was pretty much, it was one of the highest on zeros I've ever seen, but it just had this one square that's completely bright yellow. And that's a great compliment potentially. That can make a great goalie, I'm sure, right?
Yeah,
who knows? Yeah. You just don't know, and it is about assembling a team. So easily 3 or a team of 4 with a lower genome weight. Like I definitely don't want to give the perception that a higher genome is necessarily better. Like we honestly don't know where they fit, and it's all going to be in the context of the particular game that's being played.
Exactly. Right. That's what I was going to add. I think it's a really good point, Yoga, that number one, it's not just a standalone brain. There have been questions repeatedly asked in AMAs about are these few and far between interactions that we've seen in between, how brains train with one another. And they said, no, that these micro interactions are fairly frequent, that it's going to have an impact on how your team performs. The second thing, and this is, so symptomatic of how we're just, peeling back one layer of the onion at a time. Now all of our focus is on AFA, but that's one game, and everything that we're looking at here is really rich data, but it is world specific and game specific. So what might be good in one game it may be a detriment to your team in another. So it's really interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, shout out to the white paper on that one. I think there's a lot in there that we're just learning, but the white paper exists, and it does mention things like the genome matrix. It mentions how those traits are expressed in the real world in the form. Reading verbatim from it, one of the ways that the genome would be expressed in form is the size of an agent, right? And if you think of a battle or game that might not be a team, size could represent strength. It also, as mentioned in the white paper, could reduce the speed of that agent. So I'm really curious to see, as not only AIFA games, but beyond that, and how they leverage the data that exists. Because if I'm making a game today and I want to use ASM brains, you're going to be going through the same thing we're doing. You're going to look at the data, start to understand what's unique about the data and these brains, and develop games that either reward one thing or another. And you could see a game we've hypothesized that values the lower scores and inverts it, almost like the upside down. So so much will be left to where the community develops the games around it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be fascinating to see it unfold. One of the things that comes to mind was, Erwin, something that you were sharing with us, which is, now that we know that there is a quantifiable, sort of underlying data set, but what do they actually mean? Like, what are these strengths and weaknesses? And one of the things that I think you've been hypothesizing is around the color representation. Is that right?
Yeah, that was basically the next step. I don't want to deep dive into all the numbers, to be honest. I'm not a data scientist, at least. So now that I highly understand a little bit about the total value and the distribution, I think that's very interesting. Next thing that triggers me or intrigues me most is, if you look to all those beautiful brains, you see some patterns in there and some common colors. And then what are these colors meaning in the context of what we're talking about today, in the context of IVA? And if you have what just expressed also about the white paper, that was also, I think, what we discussed earlier, Nick, that this is basically one application. And if you think big, you think about the context, what other applications will there be in the future, and how this all then will relate. That is yes, mind-blowing. And so yeah, that for me, the coloring was basically next step. And then yeah, from a creative standpoint, there are a lot of studies about coloring and what colors mean. So that is what we now try to put on there. Maybe we're completely wrong, but that would be maybe next step of interest to better understand the combinations of those colors. And in my perception, why I see a lot of green. Yeah, because if I zoom out my screen, I have a lot of brains on my screen. If I scroll, I see a lot of green type of coloring, and I'm not sure how to translate that. But
does that, I mean, before we know what anything means, does that incline you to perhaps explore the marketplace for some reds and purples, or are you going to see, you're not going to front run that, you're just going to see what the official stance is?
So, sorry, just so I'm caught up with the play, are you guys discussing if the colors mean anything?
Yes, correct.
So do they, Suda?
Sorry? I actually don't know anything about the brain. Well, I've been doing all the community alpha.
What's funny, oh, sorry, Suda, go ahead.
No, that's fine.
I was just going to tack on to that, Phil. I know you're, being lighthearted there, but what's funny is I think somebody asked David this question in a previous AMA, and he's like, I genuinely don't know the answer. So even if we had, all the definitions of what the underlying data represents, it's still gamified to the extent where, everyone can have all the same answers, but you're going to have to, train in the appropriate dynamic for it to be effective. So
and that's even within their own application system as well. They've designed a game that uses these brains that they've designed to work and create something. And like you said, you could have a game which inverts it, where they literally flip the numbers on their head and say 0 is the strongest characteristic. If you've got a 0, you're the fastest instead of being the slowest, or whatever it might be. And then they could potentially, we don't know, incorporate colors or other factors within the brains that we're not aware of yet. to create, you know, amazing opportunities for all brains, irrespective of whether it's like fast or strong or, you know, or reactive or whatever it might be. And that's just absolutely bonkers. And that's why I was asking Sudha about kind of the team's reaction, because, you know, what you said on previous AMAs, they've sort of specifically said, or, you know, they don't know how these things are going to react, you know, but you kind of expect them to be there kind of going, oh, I think they might have missed the whole color angle, or the top left quadrant being about to, you know, and obviously as things to develop, I'm sure they'll have their own analysis in-house, which will be trying to work out certain things and trying to make sure, and obviously from the DAO's point of view, the idea is that the DAO controls the strength. What they don't want, as they've said before, is this idea of this master brain that's amazing at IFA that obviously then gets spawned into mini brains, and then, you know, you end up where if Erwin's got those players on his team, no one can beat him, you know. Then that's why the DAO can control all of these and control the development within the hereditary AI. And it's amazing, like, just to think about being able to, not just an amazing game, but to think about how far you can take it and the paths you can go down is
yeah,
bonkers.
Absolutely. Also, just the fact that it's machine learning and AI, it has so much randomness that's already built in. Like, you could, like, a lot of developers, etc., can have an idea of where they want to go or a direction, but then the AI could do something totally unexpected. Like, a lot of the 2-minute papers are papers where unexpected things have happened, where you've been surprised by what the AI can do. So I think that will definitely happen here as well. There'll be a lot of trial and error as well. And of course, some people will probably be able to, like most people will probably be able to look at brains in the future and say, hey, yeah, that brain would be good for the shooter use case as opposed to football use case or whatever. But even then, just time and trial and error will bring out these new behaviors and new interactions that, as for the most part, will be like a Tamagotchi that we had back in the day, and then you just found it grew a little bit or whatever, you know, and can farm more.
And what if this was cloud training, actually, is that all our brains have a backdoor where ASM has access to, and that we all at scale are actually training the AI on the backside of ASM. And the sort of the matrix idea. The
secret's out.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, I love this brainstorming, and clearly, you know, I think with all you guys putting your heads together, you've got the foundation of what it is that we're going to be analyzing, you know, kind of where the gamification stems from. So it's really cool to see. But we're obviously very much in the speculation and hypothesizing phase. Registeel, Yoga, anything you guys want to add or anything top of mind? I want to be mindful of time here. So it feels like we're getting close to a good, you know, kind of ending chapter 1 in terms of brain analysis, but there's just so much to unpack. I'm sure we'll all get together if you guys would like to do that.
Yeah, I'll put a shout out, you know, for people that might be working on this themselves. And before we started this, we were talking a little bit about how we all got together. And I know there's a lot of smart people in the Discord that might be running their own analysis. If they want to partner on it, please reach out, because I think we've been able to get to the point we are today because we're all looking at things from a different perspective, from different backgrounds, data, you know, from gaming, even DeFi. So share what you have. There are people I know that have reached out to look for brain scores that, you know, don't want it shared. But one of the things I've said is, yeah, if you want your brain scored, I'm going to put it back in the Discord because I want other people to see it. I want to train the community. So
yeah, that's great.
Yeah, we're gonna hopefully publish this tool by the end of the week. Very cool. So anyone can go and look up the heat map for one of their brains. And then I guess as a takeaway, you know, again, I think it's about team building, right? I think if I think about, you know, if I'm doing anything in terms of brain trading, you know, based on speculation, I'm looking for complementary brains that seem, because that's all we have to go on right now. So I'm looking for brains that seem to have complementary skills. And if all of my brains together and I have a black spot in a certain area, then I'm looking to try to fill that black spot. And again, that's just me and my own speculation. But I think this whole team assembly piece is is critical.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you feel about what the farmed brains will be like? Do you after doing your analysis, do you think the farmed brains will be very different in numbers or distribution, or do you think it'll just follow the same pattern?
I think it was said is that a generative brain always will have less score than the Genesis brains, if I was not wrong.
Right. But they inherit the genome, right, but at a lower amplitude.
Lower level. I'm not sure, but I thought I understood that.
Speculation. This is all quite a lot of speculation, so it's fine. Everyone,
it's fun to think
tries to take this with a grain of salt.
Because there was a benefit to have a Genesis brain from that angle perspective, so that it would be strange if a generative brain would be smarter or better or scoring higher than a Genesis brain. I would say, but not sure again.
Okay, I think it's the opposite. I think farm brains are going to be exactly as powerful as any Genesis brain, but we can breed them and make a stronger one, perhaps.
Yeah,
there you go.
Well, I mean, we didn't touch. I mean, I don't. It's a training aspect, right? So each of these brains goes through training, and so you could have a brand new brain that's had no training, that has these skills, but they're sort of inert. They don't know how to use them yet until they've been trained. And so I think you could get a highly trained team with a lower overall genome that could potentially outperform a quote unquote smarter brain just because it's had more training. So that training experience, I think, is huge. Not included in here at all, obviously, and hopefully we can start to look at that stuff in time.
Yeah, I think what's also so great, I mean, it's touched upon a little bit, just in terms of what Registeel just said then about the community, but to think about a community where, you're talking about these are considerable amounts of money that these assets, these brains, these players are trading for, but you've got this ethos within the community of building something not for an advantage of that person over the rest of the community, but the opposite, helping to grow the community, the insight, the data that we're all working to make a better product, a better community, a better overall platform, that protocol that will mean that we all succeed 10 times more by working together than we would if someone's just sniping, the highest brains or creating these things because they've got this clever model that they've created without wanting that to be part of what is. And that's really hats off to the 3, 4, 5 guys or to people that have worked on this from the data point of view that haven't been selfish and are just really focusing on the community, which is we're all on this call because we share that ethos of wanting to give as much back as we can. So
teamwork makes dream work.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. And when I think about like this tool, and we definitely want to keep investing in it and keep building it out as more data comes available. But the goal of it is to increase the level of engagement within the community and to bring more people, new people to the community, because it can be a bit daunting if you don't want to sit on Discord all day to really know what this all is. And I think if we want to bring, if there's one Achilles heel to ASM, is its complexity and how new people get in. And so I want to create this like window so people on the outside can see in and they can really understand at a simple level what they've got and what their entry point should be and how to think about it.
But also, like, if you look at some of these models that you guys have created, if someone sees something like that on Twitter, instead of being like some cute characters that are playing, what they call soccer and knocking around a pitch or whatever, to this AI genome matrix, this new paradigm, all of a sudden that, while it's also simplifying it for the people that want simplicity, it's also opening the eyes and blowing the minds of people that are like, whoa, hold on a sec, I had no idea that this is what this is about. And you're doing it in such an easy way that people can access. And that's, like I said, hats off. It's amazing what you've all been doing. So yeah. Really applaud it.
It's representative of the cross-pollination, given all your different backgrounds and, coming together in a shared interest. So really appreciate everybody's contributions. I'm so excited to see how this develops, and I hope we can reconvene again to talk in more detail about your findings.
Just one shout out to Altered State Julino, who started this whole thing. Basically, he showed me how to get to the genome matrix, which I put on Discord. So shout out to him as well.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll seek him out. All right, everybody. Well, I think this is a good chapter 1. Thanks for walking us through that. I at least learned so much. I'm really excited to do this again. So appreciate everybody's time, and we'll catch up soon in the Discord, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you, guys. See you next time.
Take care.